Hi. Okay, we are on the first part of our Why Masterclass training. I'm very excited to get into this because this is when all the good stuff starts to come out. Okay, so you're gonna absolutely need like pen, paper, your iPad to write notes on, your computer, whatever you need to have notes, because you can't just sit here and listen to this. If you're just listening while you're doing your dishes, pause this and do it at a different time, because you need to actually sit down, write this stuff out, work on it, and like reflect on it. So get yourself a big piece of paper, get yourself a million sticky notes, whatever works for you. I am a really big believer in sticky notes, and also I have my iPad with my pen. Love writing on that because I'm like, oh, I got my notes, and then I can scooch them around, and then I can organize them, and I can go back to them. That's how I organize so much of my life now. How did we ever do it with just simple pen and paper? But you can't do it with simple pen and paper. I'm just, used to the convenience now. Okay, so where we're gonna start is your why. I know it's what the masterclass is called, but we're really gonna dig more into the why versus just the simple high level. So if any of you have children, especially kids in about the 3 to 4 range, they love to ask why. Why this, Mom? Why? Why? Then why? Why that? And every single step they want to know more and more, and it can be aggravating when you're like, I don't know, it just is. So we're going to be those annoying little kids to ourselves right now. We're going to ask a million whys. We're going to start with going back to when you started. So try to remember what you were like when you started this. And if you're like me and your business has had some iterations, we might have to do this more than once. So for example, I started West Rose Media 7 years ago, but a lot has changed since then. So I started with just photography and social media management. And then things shifted. I went more into photography, and that was like my core focus for a long time. And I did a lot of stuff with businesses, but I also did a lot of stuff with like families, birth photography, all sorts of things. So, and then again, it shifted with way more of the focus again on business. And I stopped doing social media management for specific brands, and I started doing way more just on branding, just on teaching, just working with businesses and entrepreneurs. So it's, it sounds like a lot of change, but that's been over 7 years, right? So you might have a similar experience where you started as one thing and then it kind of shifted and it kind of morphed, or maybe you're back to where you were at. There's been some iterations. What I'm kind of thinking of as my business is like the last 2 years. So the last 2 years is when I really started focusing on brands only. I went away from the family photography stuff. I really started teaching. I started sharing my knowledge, all this knowledge that I've built with working with brands and businesses over the last 10 years, because I was doing it for other people before I started my own business. All of this knowledge is now kind of accumulating into what I'm doing. So all the things you've done in the past, even if your business has shifted or you've had multiple businesses, I know lots of us who have an entrepreneurial spirit, we've had more than one business, or we've worked in startups, or any of these things. So all of the things that you've done, we can draw them in as experience, and they're gonna lead to why you're doing this. Because maybe you worked for someone and you hated how it went, and you're like, nope, I can do this better. And maybe that's part of your motivation, right? So we're not gonna look at only the start date. We're kind of gonna look at the progression. Like anything that you feel like kind of matters for what you're doing now, we're gonna write that down. So we're gonna start with writing, okay, why did I originally start this? And who was I when we started that? So for me, we're gonna just walk through this, and I'm gonna give you my examples. For me, when I very first started West Rose Media, I was a new mom, and I thought, there's no way I can go back to working in restaurants. The hours don't work for me, the pace doesn't work for me, I'm a new mom, I'm squishy and full of feelings. What am I gonna do that is going to nourish my absolute love of creativity, of working hard, my entrepreneurial spirit? What am I gonna do that I can do while having a baby? Because I can't go work until 2 in the morning and live off of coffee and cigarettes anymore like I did when I was 20. That's not gonna work for me anymore. And that was my main motivator when I started all of this, of okay, so I have this collection of skills, I have this brand new life and this little person to take care of. how am I going to make this all work? So that was my motivation at the beginning. So we're going to write down. So take those same examples. Like, who was I? Okay, so I was a new mom. I was, a sweaty person trying to figure out the world. I was super creative all of my life, and I knew that was an important part of me that I didn't want to lose in motherhood or my career. So start to really flesh out some of this. So who were you? What were you like? And what were the motivators? Like, why did you start this? So for me, obviously, needed to make some money. It's okay that money is one of your motivators. Like, don't let anyone tell you that working towards money is a bad thing. That's literally why people work. It's fine. So I needed money. I needed something that worked with my schedule. I needed something I could do partially from home, but had enough human interaction that I wasn't like only talking to babies all day, because we know what that's like. So those are my main things at the beginning. Because I've had so many iterations of this business, I'm also going to do that same homework for the refresh of Westeros Media, which was about 2 years ago. Okay, so what was going on for me then? Then I had a lot of the same things. I needed to be able to do a job that I could pick up my kids from school and daycare. A job that would sustain me as a single mother, because I went from having another income when I was married to not having one. So I needed to make more money on the limited time I had. I needed to do something that filled my creative soul. I know for me, if I'm not doing something creative, then the rest of my life absolutely suffers, because it's such a core part of me. And I knew that I wanted to change the world. Because so much of my life changed over the last couple of years, I knew that I wanted to set an example. I knew that I wanted to be a beacon of light, showing people, hey, you can change your whole life, and not just survive, you can thrive. Those are some of my motivators. So who was I 2 years ago when this kind of rebooted? I was completely different than the person who started this, right? I had taken this business, but now I was standing there with new motivations and as a new person, and I had to kind of grapple with, okay, now what? Like, what do we keep? What do we toss? How are we doing this? And this might happen to you all the time, right? You might not have a huge life thing like I did, but you will have different things that happen in your life that make you have to change your business or change what motivates you. All of these things are constantly shifting, and that's why keep coming back to this. Like, do this, listen to this, and do this homework like every 6 months, every year, so that you can just be like, okay, so where are we now? What are we doing? So at that time, I'm sure that most of you know my story if you go back through the videos, if you follow me on Instagram, but I'm just going to share a little bit. What happened is I had that first baby we talked about, and then I had 2 more. I had some losses. We had a lot of turbulence in our life through that time. 3 little babies. I went from pregnant to baby and breastfeeding to pregnant again, and on and on and on for 7 years. So I was basically a blur of babies and all those things while trying to run my business. And then when I weaned my last kid, we went through a pretty big traumatic move, ended up in a new place, and I looked around and everything in my life was different. It was also the same time that all the lockdowns started. So I looked around and every single part of my life was different. My business no longer felt like it fit. I all of a sudden got my body back after all those babies. I all of a sudden started, feeling like I needed more creativity, like in a different way. Big things started shifting inside of me, and I was like, what is happening? Why do I feel this way? I started really doubting my religion, everything that I grew up in. And I also at that time finally was able to admit to myself that I was queer, and that the box that I had grown up in and put myself in was not fitting anymore. I needed to get out. It was suffocating me. So I started dismantling my life. And the thing that really is special and also super overwhelming about that is that I was running my business and my online persona as we did this. So a lot of you, if you've been here from the beginning, or if you scroll back through my social media, you can see the progression, right? I did this humongous life shift and change quite publicly. I did it while running a business. I did it while trying to feed this part inside of me that really absolutely needed to be fulfilled by creativity. And as I did this, as I think changed, my whole world changed. I left my marriage. I suddenly was the sole provider for my children. So many things shifted. So my identity shifted, how I looked, how I felt, how I mothered. I also got sober in this time. So there was literally nothing from my past other than my kids, who also were different because they were older, that came with me, except for my cameras and my absolute drive to continue to create, to continue to give something to the world. I had this insane feeling inside of me like I have to contribute something. I cannot leave this planet without having shared something, without having given something, without having given someone the hope that I needed in those darkest times when I thought there is no way I can pull this off. I knew deep down I needed to give that. I needed to share that. I needed to somehow get it all out and share it and make a difference. So those are my huge motivators at that time. I was a fresh new woman. I had a fresh new iteration of my business because I was only working with businesses and brands at this time. And I was shifting from, being a family photographer, which is just a very different vibe, to only working with businesses, and not just any businesses, like really, really ambitious businesses, a lot of solopreneurs and entrepreneurs who are on their own playing field. They're like, I want to do things my way. I don't want to do things the regular way, which really excites me, of course, because I also don't like to do things the normal way. I don't like to do things the standard way. So I really have a deep connection with my people that way. So that was like my basic why. I was like, I absolutely need to make money. Obviously, a humongous why. I need to be creative. I need to feel like I'm changing the world. And I need to do it in a way that works for my life. So it's not like bad to have a why that's like, I need to work so I can be there to pick up my kids at school time. That's not a bad why. It's not like wanting to change the world is on a higher or lower level than wanting to make money or needing to pick your kids up at 3:30. There's no hierarchy in these whys. They're all just simply things that are, and they're things that motivate us. So the more honest we are about what these whys are, what brings us around to them, and digging into them, the better we'll be. So if you're following along here, hopefully, we're writing down, who were you when you started this? What motivated you? Why did you start? What were the things you needed, right, when you started? So maybe you have multiple starting points. Maybe you have multiple shifting points like I did. So I will dig deeper into this, obviously, in my own homework of when I very first started, my 2 years ago, and then we're gonna shift to now. So do some like really open-ended journaling, like try to remember, look back to the pictures, look at yourself, right? Maybe you were a brand new mom. Maybe you had just left your marriage. Maybe none of these things. Maybe you're like, well, my life has been pretty similar all this time. There is something there that you need to like dig into a little bit. So what were your financial circumstances? Were they the same as now? Were they better? Were they worse? Were they different? Were you trying to buy a house? Were you whatever? I'm sure your examples are different than mine. Really dig into this. Like do some journaling about like, why did you want to start this? Who were you when you started this? And then once we have some of those whys, we're going to dig a little deeper into them. So why did you start this? Okay, so I needed money. Well, why did you need money? Well, to pay my bills, obviously. Yes, okay. But also there's other ways to make money. So why did you want to do it entrepreneurially? Well, I needed something that really let me be there with my kids, let me do things on my own terms. If you can probably tell, I'm not super great at taking orders from people who I don't believe in. I needed to feel like I was making a difference. I needed to make money, and I wanted to prove to myself and to everyone else that this big change that I made was worth it, right? I wanted to be like, see, I made myself a better life. And that's not bad. That's not, less than because I felt like I really wanted to like make a difference or prove myself. If that is your main motivator, you're like, I want to prove these motherfuckers wrong, then good on ya. That's okay. You don't have to feel sorry for that. I love that as a motivation. So those are my main motivators then. After we've journaled into this, like pause this video, do some of this journaling, or come back to it. After you've really gone into like why, ask yourself again and again and again, why? Dig deep into the very root of it. So why I wanted to make money, I wanted to pay my bills, I wanted to prove that I could do it, I wanted to have a better life, I wanted to go from paycheck to paycheck to like, I wanted to go to the store and buy whatever I needed for my kids. I wanted to say yes when they asked for shit. I wanted to say yes to myself when I wanted things. I wanted to have my house in my name and say, see, I did it. I'm okay. I made this big difference. I did it. That was a huge motivator for me back then. So once you dug into some of these whys, now we're gonna come to present day. So if you haven't been in your business a very long time, these things might mesh. Like if you're only like 3 months in, you might not have two very distinct differences here. But if you're 10 years in, you're gonna have more than one of these. I would say every time there was a big change or a shift in what you offer or a shift in your life, let's do one of these little pods of, okay, at this point in my life, who was I and what mattered? So now let's bring it to present day, to right now. If you've been at this for a while, you're like, oh, okay, well, like my why is like, I don't know, I need to pay my fucking bills. And like, I had ambition at the beginning, but now I feel kind of like, oh, like let's just do it, right? So remembering those whys from the beginning is gonna really help you ground again, okay, what are my whys now? Has any of them changed? For me, I feel a lot less like I need to prove myself now. I think I'm just more comfortable in my skin. I feel more like, okay, I don't need to like shout from the rooftops this big change that happened to me. I don't feel as much like I need to prove myself to everyone. I still want to have a beautiful, amazing life, but my motivation is less in the prove everyone wrong feels now. More it's like, I just want to have a beautiful life that I feel comfortable in my own skin. So that has definitely shifted for me. Obviously, you're doing this homework for you. I'm sharing my part. And also, you know, money, obviously being on my own now for all this time, I have a better understanding of what it takes, right? So at the beginning I thought, I only need X number of dollars to run my household. And now I'm like, oh, okay, the world has changed. I now have a better reality of what it takes to run the household, to run the business, all of these things. So you know, my goal for money, my goal for like what I need to actually be able to accomplish in my hours, that's changed a little bit. Mostly because I just have gone through more, right? There's so much to be said for the experience you've gone through because it teaches you things over and over again. So obviously money is still one of my motivators. I want to have a good life for my kids. I want to have a good life for me. I want to be able to do the things, a lot of those same things. But to me, it feels less like, I want to prove those motherfuckers wrong, and more like, I just want to show other women that there's a way to do this. Like, you don't have to stay for the money, or you don't have to stay in the job or the marriage or the house or whatever, just for the money. There's other ways to do it. That, to me, is still very deeply on my heart. I still very much want to show people that you can be whoever you are in your business and make money at it and really enjoy it. That's still a humongous thing for me. That part hasn't changed. Maybe it's shifted a little bit from like wild activism, I'll say, for like the whole world and trying to prove that, see, look it, in my identity, I can do this, and more to like, I just want you to know that whatever your skin feels like, whatever your life feels like, I want you to know that you can have success. You can have a business that changes the world, and you can do this. And it doesn't matter what all the differences are. What I want to look at is the similarities. Like, how are we the same, and how can I help you succeed in your business while still being you? So my whys have shifted slightly less in the 2 years to now than from in the 7 years to now. But I'm definitely like honing in, right? And this is why we continue to do this work, because I'm narrowing in more and more on my focus. So also time with my kids, right? I need to be able to pick them up from school. I need to be able to drop them off. I need to be able to work within the times. I know that I have times when they're at their other parent's house and then I can work in those times, or do I need to rest in those times? Way, way better at figuring that kind of stuff out. I've just gotten smarter. I've done more of it, so I know. So these are my main motivators. These are why they matter to me. And then looking at who am I now? So who are you now compared to the last time we did this exercise? So what's shifted? For me, I feel more grounded in myself. I feel like I have more experience. I definitely have felt a little more jaded. And I think that's a very normal part of entrepreneurialism. Is at the beginning I was so like fired up and I was like, I'm gonna do this and this and this and this and this. And now I'm like, whew, okay, I really do have limitations. I really do need to focus on what is right for me. What can I do the absolute best? Where do I absolutely shine that I can share with the world, so I'm not trying to do everything. Like there are things that I've stopped doing because I'm like, this isn't my zone of genius. So I'm not gonna put all my energy into that because that's not where I shine the most. I'm gonna shine where I freaking shine the best. And that is where I'm gonna focus. So do some journaling about like, who are you now? Do you look different? Do you feel different? Is your house different? Is your world different? Is your like day-to-day different? Do you have different, habits or ways you approach things? Do you have different systems in your business? Like, have you gotten more efficient? Have you gotten less efficient? Did you hire someone and it didn't work out? Did you hire 10 people? What has shifted? What has changed in your world? Like the things directly around you that affect you daily. What has changed since the beginning? And then start to put those into your motivators and your whys and collect all this data. And now you've got like a really good thing in your hands. Like, okay, this is what matters to me. This is the reality of my life. How are we going to bring this forward and change your business, change your content based on this? Don't skip through this part. Don't go too fast. Really sit down and then write out your why, as many as you have, and then take each one and then say, but why? And add more information. Okay, but then why that? Add more information. But why that? Like this should be multiple pages. This should take you time. Let yourself take this time. The more you get into it, the more you talk about it, share it with a friend. If you're in the Momentum Mastermind, we do this together. So we talk through your homework and I help you dig deeper. Make sure you don't skip through this part. And you might think, oh, whatever, like, yeah, I know. But really let yourself sink into this and then read it over a couple times before you go on to the next video. Because I really want this to sink in. I really want you to form a very clear picture of, okay, who am I right now? What are my whys? Who was I then? What were my whys? Who was I way back at the beginning? And what were my whys? So maybe if you left a job to start your business, do this same exercise for right before you left your job. It's gonna really, really bring you back to, okay, so like what was so suffocating in that job? What was the thing that made me think I could do this, right? Where was that wild, like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna change the world? Like, where did that come from? Get into remembering that. Like, look up the pictures from that time. Look up the content you made from that time. Look up the people you worked with, like your clients from that time, all of that. Get back and just remember. It's not saying we have to take everything from the past. It's remembering the past. It's remembering and focusing on who was I then, who am I now, and what am I going to do going forward. This is a lot to go over. You're doing amazing. I'm really proud of you. And I'm going to see you in the next video.